Did you guys see that? Did you guys see that this conflict and the discourse around it, like ended the H3 Hasan?
I really don't know anything about those guys.
You're not plugged into them at all.
Not
trying to stay away from that sort of thing.
What happened? Were they friends and now they're not, or is the
well,
opposite,
they did a podcast together for I want to say like 2 years. It's called The Leftovers, and it was a really interesting cultural kind of like online cultural moment to watch that friendship sort of disintegrate over time, because it started to fray during like a conversation about like capitalism versus communism stuff. And what had happened was like H3 had, whether intentionally or unintentionally, cultivated through his partnership with Hasan, cultivated like a really left-wing audience, like a hammer and sickle, like we need to like destroy capital kind of like audience. And they started to like have this like disagreement where Ethan was like willing to say, you know, there's plenty of flaws with capitalism. There's a lot of gaps. There's a lot of poverty, you know, but I'm just not with you with the whole like Chinese kind of stuff, like, or like full on hammer and sickle stuff. And then like a few months later, it culminated this fracture of their friendship with the Palestinian Israeli conflict. Cause Ethan is a dual citizen. Like he has citizenship in Israel. He has family in Israel.
His
and so
girl is Israeli, right? Or also his dual. Yeah.
And so a lot of Ethan's audience were, I mean, some of them were just full on like
actually
celebrating October 7th, you know, like and so like Ethan was he was like saying like, look, I'm willing to tell you like what the Israelis have been doing to Palestinians for decades is wrong, and fuck Netanyahu and fuck the Likud party and fuck, you know, the Israeli Palestinian the treatment of Palestinians, but Hamas, like what they did is fucking not good. And then like a bunch of the audience were calling him like a racist, genocidal, apartheid supporter. And dude,
they call us that all the time. They don't mean it.
That just means hello in online talk.
Yeah, that's just how it is.
That's how they think. Not very good at
it was an interesting kind of like, it was an interesting moment because it's just like,
for him to realize that's pretty awkward.
So there was a big schism in both of their audiences.
They don't do the podcast anymore, and it was just too much. Like there was like
free and open discussion had a limit for them. Yeah,
and that was a pretty big podcast, you know. So to like walk away from that was like pretty significant.
You think the audience divided them mostly?
Yeah. Well, I mean, it was the conflict and the audience. There's this thing called audience capture. Are you guys familiar with the concept of audience capture? It's like, so if you're like an influencer person and you cover politics or you cover cultural stuff, and you end up cultivating an audience over time, like you guys have cultivated kind of like a slightly more right-wing audience, I would say. Right. And, but like what happens with a lot of creators is they start to notice like, oh, well, I'll get, you know, you either consciously or unconsciously know, like I'm going to get more engagement if I frame certain things this way or that way. And so there ends up being this sort of like extremism pipeline that happens, and then it gets to a point where the creator, they're not really being authentic with their thoughts. They're relaying what they think their audience is going to want to hear. So you know,
Zach phrased it really well. Let me read it because it's interesting. Audience capture is a self-reinforcing feedback loop that involves telling one's audience what they want to hear and getting rewarded for it.
And then they have to go further and further. So they're like, oh, when I'm talking about how awesome Stalin was, I get lots of likes and comments.
Well, see, it's people easy to calling get around that, comrade. Though. We just always, one of us has to disagree so that we're always on both sides. We literally are. It's very rarely that all three of us are like full. And
if we all agree, someone will jump on the other side.
Yeah, and then there'll be, if we all agree, there is at least a dissenting opinion from somebody. They're like, look, all right, I'll co-sign that. Yeah, but here's the thing about that. You need to have a little. You need disagreement.
Yeah, it's not so interesting to listen.
But here's where I think our show does it a lot in like the meanness, right? So this is a show where we laugh at people fighting cars and think it's hilarious at that mismatch, and then the audience turns that same spirit on us, and it's like, well, don't be surprised, fucknard.
Yeah, if we got hit in a parking lot, they would have no sympathy.
Exactly.
But that's because they're dumb. Because I don't think it's funny when people get hit by cars. I think it's funny when fat black women get mad at each other. One of them gets behind the wheel of her Intrepid, and the other one still continues to show the same amount of gusto in the physical altercation, despite the fact that said Intrepid is 4,200 pounds of killing machine.
Those women are like 0-31 against the Intrepid in all the videos Kyle sent me. Huge losing streak. I don't think they're going to turn the franchise around. The Intrepid is.
I have seen so many ladies get ran down by Chrysler 300s and it still tickles me to death. I love it because but I don't want to see just some poor pedestrian get hit like that thing in Nice, France, when that terrorist attack and people got ran over. That's not funny. That's horrific. But if you're like, you're not going to talk to me that way, what you going to do? Run me. And they're like,
right. Oh, like, did you get in your car? Well, I took off my high heel shoe. Let's go.
That's an actual video.
I'm familiar with the genre.
Oh, you haven't seen this? Basically, two people are in a conflict. Someone gets in a car, and the other person, rather than like running or taking cover behind a light pole, is like, I'm not afraid of your car. And I have a theory, like Kyle mentioned the race thing, but I think it's the sex thing. I think that sometimes women feel like they're not going to get hit because it doesn't happen to them very much. You know, the punch in the mouth is a very extreme, uncommon route to take for girls.
Yeah.
So I
get hit in the mouth in 10 minutes. I go out there and say the wrong shit. I promise you. I go to Circle K, it'll go down.
It could happen with your friend. Like if you mouth off the Scott enough, then you know it might go that way. I don't know.
Say the wrong thing.
Yeah.
Man, your dog's
a little bit.
How you guys? Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I'm gonna go ahead. You're gonna take over.
Go for it.
Well, no, I was just gonna ask you guys, like, how? Because you guys don't seem to have gone down the audience capture route. Like, you seem to have, like, I feel like I'm talking to the same person I talked to like 8 years ago. Like, how have you guys avoided the trappings of that? Do you just not? I'm gonna guess that you don't look at like the comments or your replies very often.
Very rarely do I look at any comments.
The only way I interact with fans is if they and it's is if they join our Patreon and they give us $50 a month, and then they join our Discord, and then I literally game with them all night and like shoot the shit with them. And the group of guys in there are awesome. I'll sort of lean on them for like if they thought a show was good or not. And sycophants that they are, they love everyone. They love everyone. They've never had a complaint, and they better not, because I'll stand. They know I will. I'm liberal with the ban hammer. No, like, but I really, it's the opposite though. Like I feel like they'll be like, "What happened there?" And I'm like, "Look, we didn't book that guy. I don't know who booked that guy.
We didn't know he was going to have a fried brain from the mushrooms. We didn't know. We just had him on.
Yeah,
I like that guy.
Did you have somebody come on that was tripping balls?
Yeah, he wasn't at the time, but he had some.
We had a guest.
Or he probably was. I'm so naive.
So this guy touted himself as some sort of a shaman per se, and basically his story was that he had this awful experience where his wife, who was pregnant with his unborn child, died in a car accident that he caused. And it ruined him to the extent where he sought out psychedelics, more and more potent doses of them to sort of get over that trauma. And my take is that while doing that, he fried his brain. And so then he's got this new wife, and he told us that he's like, so at this point in my life, my wife was saying, I'm going to murder the children. I'm going to take the gun. I have the gun, and I'm going to murder the children. So then I went on one of my retreats to the Dominican Republic and did mushrooms with some guys. And when we got back, I talked to her and I had a whole new frame of mind. I'm paraphrasing, but it was basically that. And so I'm like, I'm doing this when I'm like, whoa, your wife said she was going to murder the children and she had the means, which means she's thought about this a good bit, went and gotten the gun. She has the gun, and you went to another country to do drugs. I love drugs and travel's fun, and I hate kids. But my take is that you're a piece of shit, dude. How do you leave your kids behind with a murderer who's telling, like, are you insane? I didn't go that hard.
You just went there?
I went a little bit softer than that, and it devolved quickly. I may have been rude to him. You know, I smoke every show, and I don't really remember these things too well. I
enjoyed it.
But I think I was pretty mean to him, and he deserved
one in
it.
Every 30, 50 guests, Kyle will decide, I've had enough of this guy. I'm not interested in his return, so I'm going to lay it down.
Sometimes they'll just be fucking liars. Like there's one guy, look, I hate a fake badass. I'm not a badass. I don't want to get in a fight. I'm not good at it. I wouldn't be good at it if I tried. I'm not gonna pretend like I will be or
aren't you still ripped as fuck, or did that go away?
I beat the shit out of you, bro. I'd smoke you. See? Now you see like
my arm up. You can't. I'll just keep you back. I got the long arms. So
He's got reach.
I'd snap those in half with my jiu-jitsu training. Please. You know how much UFC I watch? I'm a real tough guy. I watch the UFC. I'm not. There are guys who are like what I'm like pretending to be, right? There are those douchebags.
Yeah.
But we had a guy on who was like I can't remember what kind of badassery he was claiming he'd done, but he was like, yeah, my stepdad stabbed me, and I was like, oh, you stabbed me. And I ran away off into the woods and sewed it up myself. And I think I just went, no, you didn't. It was like that. It was like in Billy Madison when he's like, me and her got it on, and Adam Sandler's like, no, you didn't. Yeah, but this guy I knew, him and her did the thing. He's like, no, they didn't. Yeah, but you can imagine what it'd be like if they did.
That's a solid 30-year reference right there. Yeah. Or what, 25-year reference? Yeah.
8% of our audience, according to my made-up statistics, got that one.
I've seen that movie.
It's a great movie. So he's claiming that he got stabbed and that he stitched himself. And I'm like, no, you didn't. No, you didn't. Show me the scar. Show me, bro. Show me where you got stabbed with a kitchen knife and pulled it out of your body and sewed it up yourself, because you fucking didn't. You fucking didn't.
Yeah. And that was absurd. But yeah, the mushroom one, that's happened. Kyle will do that from time to time. But as far as like the audience retainer or whatever that was called, audience training, audience capture. Yeah. Like it was probably 5-6 years ago now. And it was actually a Sam Hyde clip that I saw that like changed my perspective on it. Cause I used to like read comments a lot more, forums, all that. And I saw a video from him that was like him talking about that. And obviously he's a big figure, a lot of people talking about him. And he was like, everyone knows how negative it is and bad for your psyche to like read bad things about yourself online. If you're a content guy, like that's negative. But he also made the point of like, it's also almost as sinister and bad to read positive things about yourself. Like the whole idea of like sitting there reading about yourself is going to breed in you like a sort of unintended narcissism in one way or the other that is going to change you as a person.
And by the same rationale, by the same rationale that you would say, don't read that negative stuff. They don't know you. Don't read that positive stuff. They don't know you.
Yeah.
Dude. They don't know how full of shit you were when you said that thing, or that you were being charitable just because you felt like you had to, or like they don't know the pressures that you're under, or like or any of that stuff.
Well,
so like
it's like it's like a house of cards. So like I heavily identify with that. Like early on in my like online career, dude, I was showered with fucking attention and praise nonstop. And I fucking bought into it, you know, and I'm like reading every comment and it really didn't take long for me to realize like this is not like a foundation. Like your foundation needs to be like the relationships that you have with people in your life.
You could have done live event shows like chats with Hutch. Show up and pay $10 at this club in LA tonight, and people would have shown up. Like
and it was like super intoxicating in the beginning, but it really was like a year, 2 years where it was like it just fell apart. Like I need more than that, and so I started. You know, that's when I kind of disappeared.
Did it turn negative on you, Hutch? Like, is that how you remember it?
It just wasn't like I remember getting like really depressed towards the end of Machinima, and it just wasn't. It was no longer work. It was like a drug that stopped working. It was like, I was in a position where I was like, okay, well, you know, I have this hosting gig and I still have this like good job. And now they're paying me a lot better. But I'm just like miserable. And that became like an Inception idea where it just kind of went down from there. And so I kind of had to disconnect for like 6 months, and, you know, and it's like it's like an ebb and flow. Like, so like I came back and then I did some crazy shit, like got engaged after like a week of reconnecting with someone.
How'd that go?
So not great. Not great. I would not recommend it personally.
Good friend of the